How's it going, YouTube? Coming again today with another video. And today, guys, what to bring to you is the updated tier list for Master Duel. I'm here with Koty Angeloff. Feel free to say hello.
Hello, guys. Hello, YouTube.
I know that you all loved their take on Salad the last time in the TCG one, so we're gonna come back at it again today and go over the Master Duel tier list, which is vastly different to our own. How you feeling about Master Duel so far?
It's a fun change of pace, honestly. I don't think it's like competitive, but whenever they have their update in about a week, 6 days, or however long it is on the 31st, they're going to be adding a whole bunch of different stuff. So I'm excited for that, honestly. But so far, it's fun. It's been fun because it's been like a change of pace.
Yeah, I really enjoy it myself. I think it's a lot of fun. Just having a breath of fresh air to play in a different format with a whole bunch of crazy things going on all at once. Colossus, we have Master Plan back. We have Astrograss, Sorcerer's back. There's just so many different cards that are just like legal right now. Grass, and it really does make for an interesting time. So definitely a couple decks we got to talk about, and they might be a little bit different than people view them in the TCG. So let's kind of hop right in and talk about a couple of these here. So we're going to start things off with the Emancipator. Me personally, I've seen this deck go off quite a bit because of Black Dragon being legal. You know, that card's always just absurd, just being able to +3 whenever. Really, really cool card. But at the end of the day, Emancipator is amazing. How do you feel like it fares right now versus things like Maxi being able to draw into Nibiru and other hand traps and whatnot?
So for every combo deck, like your deck should be playing about 5 to 7 outs to Maxi, I feel like. Whether it be like 3 Ash, Crossout Designator, Call by the Grave, or like Gamma, or some like combination of cards like this. With Emancipator, you get to play Guardian as well, so if you just normal summon it like from the start, then you can negate the Maxi that way, which is really appealing to the deck. So with Master Duel, there's like a whole bunch of combo decks, there's mid-range decks, and there are control decks. For the combo decks, I think Emancipator is... I think it's like in the middle of the combo decks, because like compared to like Drytron where they literally negate every card you play, the other combo deck is like Spiral. I think Emancipator is better than Spiral, but I think Emancipator is worse than Drytron, simply because I feel like that the Emancipator combo can lose to more hand traps than Drytron.
I feel that too. It's also if they go second, their normal summon gets interrupted. It's the same problem that we've been saying even in the TCG with that Emancipator. It's very, very normal summon reliant, whether or not they have the additional analyzer to special summon. So it is very, very strong. But again, like you said, it's not as strong as some of the other decks we may see here. I would definitely throw it just because you have to know that this is a different format that we're talking about too, referring to everyone who's watching right now, because where we might see things in the TCG like Block Dragon, oh my god, tier 0. Maxi is legal, and that changes and warps the format to the point where some decks that are just explosive and crazy may not be as high of a tier as you want them to be, but they're not going to be that low, right? I would confidently put this at 1, maybe 1.5. What do you think?
I was thinking 1.5 because, like I said before, it's not at the very top of the combo decks, but it's also like not at the bottom of the combo decks as well. It can still do very degenerate things. It's very consistent with the Block Dragon, but like you said, like it is normal summon reliant to a degree, and just because of that, it needs like if you're playing a combo deck, the combo deck has to like be able to go second, and Emancipator doesn't do it the best out of all the combo decks.
I would agree, and that's where I'm kind of leaning toward that 1.5 myself. So we're just going to go ahead and move that one on in there. Definitely a cool deck, definitely very good, but definitely has its own drawbacks as well. Leaning into a deck that is very combo-centric, but also is able to put up a nice board. Talking about adding Nister. I don't know how much you've seen this running around the ladder, but I've been seeing a lot of adding Nister lately, and it's been kind of an issue because they can go adding Nister and then summon 6 and then make like adding Nister for 6,000. And of course, that's only outed by a Kaiju or by swinging over it at that point. Going second might be a little more tough. They have a lot of extenders though. Going first, I feel like this is a really solid deck. It's the same thing as doing like the Cook combo, right? Like nobody main decks Kaijus in a series of best of one. It just seems like a really strong pick. What about yourself?
So for me, like Adagnister has its gimmick, right?
Right.
It makes a 4 to 6,000 like arrival cybers, and if that gets outed, then you pretty much lose. Um, it's very good against all the back row decks because, like for instance, if you play against Eldritch, Goldmore can only get to 35, which can't out the Adagnister. But if you play against like a really heavy combo deck, something like Drytron, a grass variant, some type of Dragon Link deck, or even Emancipator, like we said earlier, they can make Boral Sword and Access Code pretty easily. Where both of those cards out the ad arrival at 6,000. So
Yeah.
with that being said, I feel like Adagnister is like more of a rogue deck simply because it also loses to a lot of hand traps right now.
That's fair. I was going to put it in tier two. I could agree with Rogue though. I just think that in a best of one series, when no one's running the Kaijus, just the amount of matchups that it kind of just shuts out by summoning that big of a monster, definitely worth the while. But at the same time, when we have cards like Nibiru and Maxi to draw into Nibiru, it can get really tough with that. So I could definitely agree with the Rogue category here. The next one, though, I feel like this one has a really good matchup regardless of what you're playing against, just because even going second, Zeus is such a strong card with decks like BA being able to be like looping their own cards, cards like Farfa to go ahead and banish something else, and really being able to interrupt with your opponent. And then if they go first, they can set up a pretty nice board too. I would definitely put this probably up toward 2, maybe, probably not 1.5. I'd probably put it in 2. But what do you think about that?
So the question is, what type of BA is this? Is this like Trap BA, Combo BA, Block Dragon Sekka's BA? What type of BA are we going to classify this as?
I would say just doing like your standard BA, like Zeus Turbo. That's the one that I've seen the most on here. And then we can kind of talk about the Black Dragon or like the Sekka's Light variant of this, because that is definitely really strong as well.
Okay, so if we're playing like the Beatrice Control with trap cards type BA, I personally haven't seen this deck at all. I haven't seen that or the Block Dragon version at all. So like, just I would personally have to go like off of like the TCG experience and how well this deck plays around Max C. So the thing is BA plays around Maxi pretty well, actually. And I'm pretty sure that if you Maxi a BA player, you can sometimes just deck out even through like Nib. But with that being said, like hand traps don't really hurt it. Like Valor, Imperm don't hurt it. I think that it could be a solid tier 2 pick.
I think this is really cool too, because another card that I think it's kind of thrown out a little bit right now is the fact that we have Snow and Orbital Hydrolander still as well. So that was actually a really popular variant that really did well for a long time. So that's one thing that I really do think, like pushing that into that tier 2 slot, this could be a really strong pick. And as far as I know, it might be pretty cheap on Master Duel to build too. So I think that would be a really nice pick for the meta.
Right. I agree with that.
The next one up would be Dino, and I actually have a really strong side for this because Dino in this game seems like absolutely insane. Reason being, though, is because we have 3 Miscellaneousaurus, and I feel like if your opponent maxes, but you Miscellaneousaurus, like, what are you going to draw into Nibiru? And then, like, you go battle phase, like, nothing they drew is important. So, like, if you have game on board, like, they're just dead. The other thing is we have 3 Lethal Sagem, so you can go ahead and just banish things out of your opponent's extra deck. We have Denglong VFD. Like there's so many different things that this deck can just do. Also with like lawn mowing is a thing as well. Dino just has unbelievable potential in this game, but that's just me. What do you think?
So I feel like the best version of this deck is going to be the blind second version of Dinos.
Absolutely.
Like the going first version with like Litho Sagem, with Dean Long and all the The that combo kind of plays into Max C, but you definitely like it's very good because it just makes VFD very easily. But I feel like the Go second version of this deck is very good because that deck really just breaks any board that your opponents put up. Like, if you play against that Emancipator, Dinos, as we saw in the TCG, it doesn't care about the Emancipator board, the
Yeah.
Buster Lock and all that. Like, you just summon UCT and you destroy everything on their board. And then you make, like, your Dolka, your Logia, plus UCT, plus, like, something like a Lambda, maybe, or IP. And it's usually just game from there. I would personally put Dinos at 1.5, though. I think the deck is very good. I wouldn't put it at tier 1 simply because of how, like, degenerate Master Duel, like, slash OCG format is. But I do think it's a good pick, though.
So I would have to slightly disagree with you here. I would put it in 1 because, so we're both in agreement that Drytron's like literally one of the most broken things in this game, right?
It's pretty good, yeah.
So if you summon, or so like if you like go activate effect and they go negate ultimateness, you go okay. You go activate effect, they go negate ultimateness, and then you go summon UCT. Like UCT is bigger than ultimateness, and then it can just like crack the board. Depending on what else they put around it, though, it just seems really good because again, like if they have their ultimate that's trying to negate everything, and you just summon like the big dude, like they literally have to have like IP on their board. And go like unicorn. So I don't really know if it would be like 1.5 or 1. So I could see the argument for both sides, but I personally would throw this in 1.
Yeah, that's understandable.
When it comes to Dragon, you did a long time with the Thunder Dragon deck when we had Colossus legal. That was like your pet deck for a long time. What do you think about it now, and how has it really been innovated in Master Duel?
So with this, Thunder Dragon, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways you can build it. You can build it with like the rocket cards. You can build it with like the danger cards. You can put them together. You can play with grass. So personally, the best version of the deck that I've found to be like the best, I guess, is that with the Thunder Dragon and the rocket cards, you get to play more hand traps. You get to play around 9 hand traps in your deck without suffering consistency issues. I think it's been pretty. It's a very fun deck. It's a very fun deck. I don't think that's like if you're trying to win like a Master Duel tournament or anything like that. I don't think that's your go-to deck. But I definitely think it's a very good deck. It can play through a lot, and it can make some really, really big boards.
I would agree, especially since we got things like the Buster Lock. Union Carrier is definitely a card still. So I don't really know if I'd put this that high. Maybe like a strong tier 2. Where are you thinking on that?
Yeah, I was thinking like a tier 2 because it's not as good as the other combo decks that we have on the list. But it can break boards pretty easily, though, which is something that I like about it a lot. And like you said, we have Union Carrier, we have Buster Lock still, we have 3 of each of the baby dragons. If you want to go the grass route, then you have unlimited options. But I think that the tier 2 spot would be probably where this deck should go.
3 baby dragons each. That's so absurd. Master Duel is crazy. Just like the amount of things that you can just play. It's so wild.
Yeah, you can pretty much play like any deck like that you want. You can play like any deck and it probably be okay.
Yeah. Like when I started looking at the spiral cards, even everything's back, and then we have like 1 quick fix, but everything else is at 3. I'm like, man, Resort about to go bare. Like that's kind of crazy. They can't target anything on your board.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Like this Manless is a good, refreshing, like fun format.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's pretty degenerate, but at the same time, like everyone's allowed to be degenerate, so like it's pretty fun. So we have a similar style of deck, which is from dragons to dragon maids. I personally think this deck is really cool. I think that it has a lot of good application, especially around Maxi. In the TCG, even as a control deck, it's very strong. We've seen it actually do well in some tournaments, and it's like one or two cards away from being like pretty playable. Like it's playable, but it's not like insane, right? But like having Max C and having other cards that are actually just like banned right now back into the game, I think that it gives it a little like buff. I personally would just put it into Rogue, but I think that it's really nice to play this on Master Duel, and I've seen people have a lot of success with it.
Yeah, like, so with any of these control decks or mid-range decks like Dragon Maid, you're going to have to play, like, a minimum of 12 hand traps, I feel like, to be able to keep up with, like, the more powerful decks and the more consistent mid-range combo decks, right?
Right.
The deck is good, though. The deck is definitely good, but I would have to agree and put this in Rogue.
So, Drytron, man, 3 Benton, 3 Ava, Union Carrier. So I personally like. I don't know. I would put this thing up in 0. This thing is just, like insane, but I'm gonna leave that one up to you. Like, what do you think on this one?
So for me, I don't think the deck is tier 0. I don't think it's tier 0, but I do think it's like tier 1 or like 0.5-ish. I think it's almost tier 0, right? The only reason why I don't think it's tier 0 right now is because people haven't optimized their decks. I've been playing a couple different decks on Master Duel, and every time that I play like a hand trap deck, like something like Striker, I never really have a problem with the Drytron matchup, because either you max see them or you open something like Gamma Nib or like Valor Nib or some combination of hand traps, and like it's usually really hard for them to play through 2 to 3 hand traps, right? And if you max see them, then there's no way that they keep going.
That's fair.
I don't want to put this at tier 0. I want to put this at tier 1. But I do think out of every combo deck, Drytron is the best like combo deck.
That's fair. I just have so many times where I'm even playing against this just in Master Duel alone, right? And I'm playing like some kind of combo deck, and then all of a sudden they just like go Alpha Zeta and just like crack the board. And the fact that you can combo and then you can also play Maxi and tell your opponent to stop even more. That's another reason why I say like it gets that extra buff, because like even if you do get hand trapped, you can also just play Maxi and return the favor. So that's why like decks like this, especially when Maxi is legal, is kind of insane, because like the fact that everyone can just play it, you know. So I agree that like it could be a little off the 0 mark, because it's not like Rongo or like Hand Loop Turbo, but like at the same time, the potential behind that deck, once people, like you said, get it optimized, is going to be unreal. That deck is just crazy.
Right.
So when we're talking about like crazy like board breaks, monster negates, like gold bird decks, right? There's kind of the inverse of that, where we see every single floodgate in the game is just like legal. And we have like triple skill drain, we have a vanities, like it's an interesting time to play the game. Decks like Outlich really do capitalize on things like this, and it's very, very consistent to just like get 5 floodgates and flip skill drain into your opponent, right? And then you have Max C on top of that, so you can keep drawing more floodgates. And even if you get L-Stormed, like you can just keep resetting everything. I personally would put this deck just instantly in 1. This thing has been just dominating the ladder. From everything I've seen and complaints that I've seen, like this has been like the deck of like everyone's talking about. What do you think about it?
Right. So like Eldritch, like in a Master Duel format, right, where it's only best of 1, Eldritch becomes so much better because there's no side deck, right? So there's no Twin Twisters, there's no Lightning Swarms, there's no Harpy's Feather Duster, there's no Red Reboots, unless like someone decides to main them. But no one's maining those types of cards right now, except maybe like Lightning Storm or Twin Twister.
Right.
And with no one playing those cards, like Floodgates are very, very rampant and very, very good. And Eldritch can play all of them, like you said. Like they can play the Skill Drain, they can play IO, they can play Emptiness, they can play Ghost, and they can play Rivalry. They can play pretty much any floodgate, right?
Right.
And with them playing this many like floodgates in their deck, it gives them like a really easy like it. They can steal wins so easily because it is only best of one, and I would have to agree and put this at tier one.
The deck's just insane. Like, you clear the skill drain, they flip IO, and then you're just like, man, this deck, it's just insane. Because, like, in a best of one format, so many decks are just, like, either really good or really bad. And you'll see that, like, as we go on this tier list, that, like, some decks just, like, they can't do it in the best of one. It's tough. So, you know, that's always fun. So I'm actually going to move up our friend Double Iris behind the Endominion here, because we're going to talk about two variants. We're going to talk about pure Endominion, and then we're going to talk about the Pendulum deck, just like in general, like the Electromite Go Bearer Magician deck. But so I feel like between these two, I feel like one's definitely better. And I think that just playing like the standard Magician deck, honestly, is probably the most consistent. Playing with like the Endominion cards, also broken. I've seen both lists. I've seen some lists with playing both. I do like the fact that you can just kind of dumpster everything out on your board and then you have like 6 negates. But at the same time, I feel like the Magician deck is just way more consistent. They have much more to use right now in the card pool. What do you think about the two and the differences between them?
Yeah, so I definitely think that the Magician version is better than the Endymion version because there's all like I've still seen people that have played the Endymion version go activate Cerberus in their scales and get Ash and just pass.
Yeah.
Where you can't do that against the Magician, right? Like you can't do that against the Magician deck. And with that being a thing, like with the Magician deck, I think that gives it a lot bigger of like boost. I would say because also like people don't understand that the FTK is legal too. Like we have Nightingale and the and Starving Venom out.
Yeah.
And it's all accessible through the extra deck now because Verte can send the instant fusion to special summon the Nightingale.
That's crazy. Yeah,
So like
it's super good.
so like I've been seeing the Magician like summon it very, very easily. And now with the Electromite, like almost every time you go first, you're able to FTK them.
So just based off that alone too, and I agree, especially because Magician has Astrograph, right? Like that's pretty insane. I would definitely put the Magician deck up in, well, maybe tier 1.5, but since it can just like FTK, like Pendulum to me, the only reason I would say 1.5 is because every single time that you have to go second, like it's still the same problem, right? Like Pendulum's always had a problem. Even the TCG going second is just rough. I would put Endominion and Rogue, and I'd probably put Magician's 1.5. What do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like, I feel like to be a tier 1 deck, you either have to be able to, like, put up such insane board that you will never lose going first, or be able to go first and second. And I don't think that the Magician deck does that, and I definitely don't think the Endymion version does that.
No, I would definitely put this in Rogue and then put the Magician deck in 1.5. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Now, the next one really got a buff coming into this because Infernoble just really was able to shine now since it has quite a bit of its pieces back, including Smoke Grenade, which was pretty crazy. When I saw that, I was like, wow, they'd actually have that back now. That's kind of nuts. So they have a lot of ways to play, and they have a lot of their cards back that they didn't have anymore. I want to hear your opinion on this because this is something that used to be really, really strong, but it's still so reliant on Auroradon that I don't really know if we put it that much higher because of that.
Right. So I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I think Infernoble's Rogue.
Yes.
So yes, they have Smoke Grenade, but the thing is Phoenix Blade is banned.
Right.
Right. So with them not having the very constant like discard outlets, like it hurts them a lot. Also, like it's still if you hit the Isold or the Auroradon, you just lose. Right. Yeah. And with everyone playing like so many hand traps, it's very, very like very hard to play. And don't even get me started because like Max C literally turns those decks' entire strategy off. Where
Yeah.
other combo decks, they can just like pass or maybe still play and put up like a board or something. But like this at Infernoble, their whole thing is to hand loop. And
Yeah.
Maxi literally will not let that happen. Like they don't put up insane boards. They put up like 2 to 3 negates. But like their whole thing is hand looping. And whenever you think about Maxi, I think like it hits this combo deck the most out of it. Because like you can't even go like normal summon Dolphin and rip a card out of their hand because they will just chain Maxi that way. Where
Yeah.
like Infernoble was very good because you could Dolphin away hand traps. Or like see hand traps and be able to play around them.
Yeah, but by the time
Where
they summon the
like with
dolphin, you're already
Maxi you
dropping
just can't.
Maxi.
Yeah, you literally just can't play around Maxi. No matter what deck you're playing. Unless you have the Call by or the Ash.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that too. Like when you have Maxi, like it doesn't matter because you know you can just drop it whenever. For a small while on the ladder, I was playing Striker Demise, and then like it didn't even matter. Like if you're out of it, you could just like drop Maxi out of your hand, like draw it, and then if you drew like in the next turn you had one, then you can just sit on it. And anytime that you need to resolve your demise, you could just like draw Maxi. It's pretty
Right.
nice.
Like Maxi is such a game like warping card.
Yeah, one thing just literally destroys the whole format. Crazy.
But yeah,
Insane. Who knew?
I would definitely put Infernoble in Rogue.
Yeah, that's definitely gonna sit right there. It's a very good point though about like hand looping versus Maxi. It doesn't really work.
Hmm.
I'm assuming that's why Gumbler lasted so long in their format because Maxi just like doesn't care.
Yeah, that's probably why. If I had to guess.
So we see a Barrage ban, right? But they still have a lot of their zoo cards. They have Dryden, which is always very good. One thing that we saw a long time ago with Grass, especially, was the Zoo Noid deck. So just talk about like Noids in general with Grass. What do you think about this? Because I think having Grass alone in this it just makes it insane because like they can just do so much more now.
So I don't think Infernoids is the best grass deck, but they do have reasoning at 3 as well. So they kind of have 9 copies of grass. I don't know what monster gates up, but just alone, like with reasoning left arm and grass, they have 9 different grass S cards. Infernoids are a good going second deck, but it will just take an automatic L to like any like Drytron deck.
Yeah.
And like with them like playing against Drytron, like almost everyone that's playing a combo deck is like on some sort of like Drytron deck, right? Um like you're not able to play hand traps in your deck either because that will conflict with the reasoning.
Yeah.
So like you can only play like Gamma and Maxi in your deck. So I don't know. I think the deck is crazy whenever it does its thing, but that's every deck in this format. I feel like.
Yeah, Infernoid would probably have to be down in Rogue here. I do think that it's really strong because of the grass and the ability to have that. But like any single time, like you're talking about with like Drytron, the whole problem is that when you're going against any kind of negation, like you just get ripped by anything when you activate your grass, when you activate your left arm, when you try to go for your imagination. If it doesn't go off, like you don't really play the game because that leaves you with like 5 cards in hand, and like most of the time you have to banish 2 of them at least to summon a monster, and then like you're down a lot. So to me,
Exactly.
it's really really tough to try and say like this is the best way to go. If you even go first and you have like grass, like you can kind of do things, but like you'd rather just go second because of imagination and then having grass on top of that. So I definitely would just throw this in Rogue, but it's a very cool deck right now. So the next one we don't have as a thought. I don't believe. I think that's still banned.
It's banned. It's banned.
Yeah. So with Lunalight though, Lunalight's a really cool deck, and a lot of people really want to do like the Lunalight Orchest ordeal, and I'm pretty sure Tiger's at 1. So I mean it's playable, but I don't
Tiger's
know.
at 3.
Tiger's at 3.
Yeah, Tiger's
Okay.
at 3.
That's pretty good though. But we have Harp as well. So like the Lunalight Orcus deck is definitely doable. I think Lunalights in general are pretty cool. I just don't know how big of a board they can really do. I know it's very consistent and it does a lot of very cool things and it can extend very well. But just like against Maxi too, like just trying to think about like, the other combo decks as we keep coming back to. Does it do more? I think that it would do more than like the Adagnister and like the Dragon Maid decks. But I don't know if it does as much as like Magicians or Emancipators.
Right. So I don't really know what they're ending on now. I think that they are going for like an F-Zero line, which none of this plays around Maxi at all because I think that they're just going to like double Force Tricks or like Force Tricks plus like any other rank 4 and then going into F-Zero that way.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I don't think this deck's very good because it can't go second as well, and the turn 1 boards that it makes is like mediocre compared to all the other combo decks. But then again, that may just be me not like seeing enough of it played or like the combos being optimized yet as well.
Yeah, this is definitely a deck where it has a lot of exploring to do in the current format, and like you said too, the format's going to update here very soon. But I do see that Lunalight can be a big contender. That just has a lot of very good engine pieces that just allows it to play, and it searches like a ton. So I really do like this, and like end boards that you can end with, I'm assuming are going to be something like Nightmare Redoer and like the F-Zero Utopic Draco Future. So like there's a couple things that it can do. I'm not too sure how far it goes. But I mean we can put this, I would say, like in Rogue, maybe a bit above in like tier 2. I personally like this more than I do like Adagnister or Dragon Maid or even Infernal. But it's in a weird spot right now for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely in a weird spot. Like I think that you can put it in tier 2 though, just because the grind game that this deck has.
Yeah, it definitely does more than the other ones, but I definitely think that it's just an unexplored waters currently.
I would agree with that.
There's something else too in this game that I just have not seen yet. I probably played against like one, and that's Phantom Knight, which is pretty crazy to think about because we have so many different options in this format right now, and people love Phantom Knight. Like that's about to be one of the best decks potentially once we get the new ban list and we get the Grand Creators. Like this is anticipated to be one of the best ones. Yes, we don't have things like Destroy Phoenix Enforcer, which does help out the deck a lot, but it's still one of those things where I would really just kind of expect to see this deck kind of pop off, but we really haven't seen it that much. Have you even like ran into too much of this in the ladder?
I've seen like a decent amount of Phantom Knight, I would say. They're going back to the Rongo version of the deck though.
I have seen that.
Yeah, they're going back to the Rongo version. Like they don't need to play like Dagda or Scythe or any of that right now. Like they can just make Rongo with Bamboozling. So like I feel like this is like one of the like more of the I win type decks. Right? Not like we don't care about making we don't care about making VFD or any of that. We just make Rongo and we say you can't play the game ever if I go first.
Right. So with this kind of a deck though, I feel like it's almost under the same category as like the Adagnister. I know like it's not at the same, like it's definitely better, but it's one of those things where like Nibiru, Imperm having your Maxi, like it just makes this very difficult to pull off. Do you think that it matters when we have things like the Maxi in the format as long as you just make the Rongo?
Yeah, so I think if you make Rongo, then it doesn't matter if you get Maxi, I feel like, because you literally can't play any of those cards. And at the end of the turn, they have to discard all of their cards. And Rongo is going to have like 7 materials under it, 6 or 7 materials. And like on the following turn, like you're going to be able to just put up enough damage to kill your opponent, I feel like. And something that I like about this deck a lot as well is that it has so many extenders, so it can actually play going second pretty well.
So are you thinking about putting this up toward like 1.5 then?
I think this deck should be 1.5. Because then again, it's not Drytron, And if you do get max seed, you're probably going to go for it and just play the they better draw nib type of game.
That's fair.
So that's why I don't think it's tier 1, but I do think it's a tier 1.5 deck if you played the Rongo version.
Yeah, that's definitely like an interesting way to look at it too. Is it like, listen, like you better have Nibiru or you're just not playing the game. Like it's gonna go one of two ways, and that's what's so crazy about the best of one formats. And I haven't personally ran into a lot of PK, so I don't really have a lot of experience so far in the ladder with it. I have seen a lot of Rongo list, so I do understand that. It's a very strong card, and there's only one card in the entire game that outs it, that being Xyz Encore. Which is just insane, and definitely nobody's playing that card. So like if it hits the board, they're just dead. So that seems pretty wild to me. Next up here, I know that we might have some differing opinions on this. I added this in. I really like Plunder. I'm just gonna call it out and like as it is and call it Rogue. I really like this in this format. I would call it Rogue. In TCG, I'd call it Tier 2. But it's a really solid deck, and I feel like it's just very underrated personally.
There's a reason why I haven't even seen or heard of anyone wanting to build Plunder on Master Duel. I think this deck's not that great at all, especially in Master Duel.
I've heard about it here and there quite a bit, actually, like myself. And I don't know. I'll put it in Rogue. I could definitely see it around. But that's just like a quick thing on that. Definitely wanted to add that. But with Prank Kids, definitely a solid contender in this, I feel, because especially if you're playing against decks like the Alick, when they have all the skill drains, you can just play under skill drain. And just all like the starters that it has available to it as well. Definitely would put this up like at least 1.5. They have 3 Meow Mew. Maybe up toward 1. It's definitely up to you on this one as well, because it going second, I'm assuming it would just be kind of tough. But they do play a million hand traps in this deck, so like that's for me where I just say it's probably tier 1, because you can just main deck like Maxi, Ash, Veiler, Imperm, Nibiru. Like it doesn't matter because you have 3 Meow Mew. You can just do what we did in the TCG and just play literally like 18 hand traps.
So I was actually leaning more towards tier 2 or 1.5.
Okay.
Like I feel like there is an argument for tier 1.5 because of, like you said, how many hand traps this deck is able to play, and it is a 1-card like combo deck. So I think that we could put it at 1.5 just because of Meow at 3, it being able to play so many defensive cards in the deck, and also this deck doesn't really care about Maxi either.
No.
Because of Pandemonium, which I think them not really caring about Maxi, like every time Maxi gets activated on them, it turns into an upstart, which is still good, but like not what you want your Maxi to be doing. So just because of that alone, I think that you can put it at tier 1.5, but I don't think Prank Kids is ever better than Eldritch, though.
That's fair. I just think that it has a really solid matchup, because even under skill drain, like skill drain, that doesn't matter in that matchup. Like they distribute for cost.
Right.
So for me, I just think that it has a really good matchup with Outlook. So that's why I would push it a little higher, but I can agree with 1.5 for now. That's good. We haven't really seen too much of what the format can do yet, so it's definitely still not defined. So I could agree with that. Kind of like a mid tier. One of the decks that I've seen that actually be very prominent, honestly, I've seen it a lot, and that's a lot of people who are just playing like pure Doll. What do you think about that? Because we haven't seen that kind of a strategy in a long time.
I haven't seen that much of pure Shaddoll yet. I've been seeing it like how it's played in the TCG with the Invoked and Dogmatica stuff. I think it's good, but I don't think Winda's nearly as good in Master Duel as it is in the TCG, though.
I agree. There's definitely a lot of cards right now that just like don't really care, and so like Winda becomes less important here. It's still like a strong card for what it is. I've seen a lot of Pure Shaddoll, and I've seen a couple IDS, and I know that IDS is still doing really well with like just normal summon Alistair of the deck. Right. So that's why I'm kind of leaning toward with this like picture here. But also just wanted to mention like Pure Shaddoll, just because that's just been kind of picking up a little bit of steam here and there. I've been seeing it. It's been kind of cool. As IDS, I'd probably just throw it back up to like next to, well, I would probably have to think about that honestly, because we only have like one Nadir.
Yeah,
I'd probably
just
put
one
it like
Nadir.
a little further down, probably tier 2 then. Because I haven't seen it be like that insane, but like one Nadir, I feel like the deck is kind of like hurting a little bit, not like that bad, but I don't know. I feel like it'd be a little lower because the window also just isn't that strong right now. So
Yeah, just because of how ineffective like Wanda is right now, I think is what I think that it would be tier two. Simply because of like Nadir's at one, which is like the biggest thing. So I think I definitely put it at tier two.
yeah, I had to think about that for a second. I was like, wait a second, New Year's at one. Oof. Like I'm not saying that
Like
like means that much, but like at the same time. You got to realize in the TCG, like 3 Nadir on top of everything else and prosperity is kind of nice. And
yeah,
so otherwise they're just ending with like their Makaba if they can't get Nadir because then they can't get their Schism and then they can't get their Dogmatica package. So you have to like main deck triple Ecclesia just to get to it.
right. Like I also was considering putting this in Rogue, but the problem with that is like it has too much of like player base behind it, and like so many people are playing this deck, like for it not to be Rogue.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's solid at tier 2. And the next one is actually really funny because this deck is super budget. Like this deck is super budget. The extra deck's a little expensive, but everything else is like rare. Spiral. Spiral is really cool and it has a lot of cards to it right now. We have triple resort. We have triple master plan.
Everything. It just has everything.
Like we have like one quick fix, but everything else is full power, which is just insane. And then it's cheap too. Like for me, this goes at least 1.5. Spiral is crazy. Resort being able to just activate it, and then all of a sudden, all of your opponent's targeting effects just don't matter. And just being able to go into your sleeper and not being able to be affected because of the last resort, being able to set up a nice big board. I don't know. To me, this would at least have to be at 1.5.
Yeah, so the thing is with this deck, right? I
Right.
think that the going second with this deck isn't that bad either, because the thing is if you're able, like, depending on what your opponent sets up, I feel like Spiral can usually break a lot of boards. The only thing is that if if your opponent activates a skill drain, I feel like Spiral can play through it like pretty well. Um, I feel like you do have to play back row removal in this deck, like particular though. But this deck is very, very consistent. Like you said, that we have two master plan being played now, and we have 3 resort. So like the boards that this deck can make is just insane.
Yeah, for real. It's actually just nuts. And like the fact that we have all of this and we have souls at 3, because when we got it back again, we didn't have all this. So like now we have souls at 3 too. Like that just seems insane.
Yeah, like this deck, this deck's insane though. The combos that it does are just insane.
So you want to push it any higher than a 1.5 or you want to keep it at
Uh,
1.5?
um, it's hard to determine. Honestly, it's actually really, really hard to determine where this should go
It is because I don't know
because
if you remember the last iteration of this deck in the TCG when it bricked really bad.
yeah, it was
Um,
the extravagance version though.
There
Is the
was
thing.
that, and there was like just the regular version, and then there was like I think it was like you and Elysium did like the extravagance version, and then that took off really well. And then there was like a separate deck. There was like 2 different versions of it, but like the deck still struggled a little bit from bricking.
Yeah, it definitely did struggle a little bit from bricking. I think like just because of that, we should put it at tier 1.5
Yeah,
because it does still have the same problems.
I would have to agree. Definitely insane though. The fact that it's that cheap and like anyone can just pick it up and play it, like after you learn all the combos and whatnot, of course. Still definitely a contender in the meta.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree.
So we had differing opinions on this last time. I don't know if we're gonna have differing opinions on this time. But I am on the impression that once you hit plat with striker, it is a rough day to play the game. Um, it's not impossible, but like once you hit all the crazy combo decks, unless you're on a list that's playing a ton of hand traps, it's just a very, very rough time. Where would you like Striker at? Because I am already on the downside of this deck right now in the plat ladder.
Really?
It's been bad. Like if they flip skill drain, man, and you don't have the out, like it's a tough time.
So Striker was the first deck I built on Master Duel just because of how cheap it can be and the amount of staples that you were able to craft to be able to play this deck.
Yeah.
So like I feel like Striker is like a really good deck to like start out with just because of the amount of staples it pretty much forces you to craft to like set you up in like the long run for Master Duel longevity. I think that Striker's tier 1.
You'd put it in tier 1?
I actually think Striker's tier 1. This deck, like, you play the Ghost second list, and I think right now I have 15 hand traps in my deck.
Yeah.
And all of them are just so high impact, right? I have Gamma, I have Maxi, I have Nib, I have Valor just because I played the Celine combo. And you also have Ash to stop, like, Maxis and stuff. Like, I feel like this deck is just very, very good as a deck overall. Because if I wanted to climb, like, and get the Plat 1, I think it would be so easy with Striker.
See, I'm currently sitting at, like, almost Plat 2, if not Plat 2, I don't remember, just from playing Striker alone. And it's one thing where, so the reason why I'm on like the more lower side of Striker right now, being on the like the tier list, I probably would throw it in like 2.
Really?
It's one of those decks right now where if you just go second, or like you are forced to go first and you're trying to go second, and your opponent just sets up like anything crazy, or you get L-Stormed, or if you're playing against like the Eldlik deck, which is one of the most popular decks right now, flipping up like Skill Drain IO, there's a lot of problems that you run into when you're playing Striker, unfortunately. And even like your minimalistic plays, whenever you go like Ray Effect and they chain Maxi, like they still at least go +1 when you summon out another dude, and then you have to go into like your Kagari or something just to try to break the board. So to me, it's been pretty rough. There, for me alone, being able to be in like Plat 2 right now with Striker, I would probably put it up into like 1.5, but that's just because if you're the right pilot, you can play the deck. But like strictly off of like a whoever standpoint, it'd be really tough, I feel like, in Plat to play Striker correctly.
Yeah, but that's the thing though with Striker. Like the Striker is only as good as the pilot. Like if you play Striker at like the top of the list, right? I feel like this deck is always tier 1 just because of how you can build the deck, right? You have so many like free spots to play like non-engine cards, because I think the Striker engine by itself is only like 18 cards, right?
Yeah.
So you get to play like 22 other cards, so like 15 of them are like hand traps. You get to play Twin Twisting in your deck, and you play something like Desires with like Pot of Avarice or something along the lines of that. Even though Kagari's at 1, I feel like if you manage your resources well, then it is a tier 1 deck, like for sure. Like, I don't know. I feel like I don't think that any deck has like made like an insane board against me whenever I've played Strikers so far. I feel like it's always like super beatable just because the amount of like high value hand traps you can play in the deck.
That's fair. I definitely could see where you're going with that. I've been very up and down on Striker over the past couple days since the release. In playing, it's had its really high moments, its really low moments, so it definitely can bounce back and forth. But I definitely see a lot of growth in the deck. I see a lot of other decks being like in a very big experimental state. So it really just depends on where the format goes for me. I could agree personally with like 1.5, and I could see where you're saying like tier 1, just because I've been playing the deck for forever, so I know how that just kind of works out in a format like this where you can kind of just like adjust on the fly, which is why I really like the deck. But it definitely has seemed a little harder. But definitely becoming a little bit easier as people are starting to try out other decks. But even against decks like Spiral, right, when they activate like Resort, it's just tough.
Right. Like, another thing that I think pushes this deck to tier 1, though, is like this deck does not care about Maxi either. Like,
Yep.
I don't think this deck cares about Maxi that much because you can always just chain Ray, so they don't get their draw off of Maxi. So with Maxi, they're either going neg one or just drawing one card with it. I feel like every time as well.
Yeah, I feel like if you know what you're doing though, and you see anyone activate like engage, roll, zero, like anything before they summon a ray, and you just preemptively drop maxi, like you're either giving them an upstart or you're playing into it, and it or like you can just pass, but it's really tough too, especially if they went first and they already have like a negate or two, and then they just like preemptively just drop maxi, like it is just a rough time.
Like something also cool about this is that like so say like I do activate engage and you chain Maxi, you always have the option to get gamma there as well,
True.
which is like very very risky. And the striker deck by itself already plays 7 outs to Maxi, being like call by Ash and Gamma
Yeah.
if you're playing it that way. Because like also if you go Ray effect like during the battle phase and they go Max C, you can also Gamma them then as well, which is like very good.
Another thing I'm not going to discredit either is I've won multiple games just by activating Kaiser Coliseum, Summon Shizuku Pass.
Oh, you're playing the go first version.
I'm cracking the board and activating Kaiser.
Oh, you're cracking the board and then activating Kaiser. Okay, that makes sense then. That makes sense. Okay.
I'm choosing the monster that I leave on the board and I activate Kaiser and then they just scoop.
Okay, that's fair.
It's just dumb. Like you just activate it and they're like, oh, that's cool. Good luck. It's great. It's a great card. But yeah, so Striker, it's like it's one of those things that you could have a conversation about for literally hours because it's just
Right.
the deck itself. It's so versatile. You can play it in so many different fashions, and it's been dear to me for a very long time. I love this deck. So I'm kind of in my beginning stages on Master Duel with it. So we'll see where it goes.
You can put it in tier 1.5 for now, though.
That's fair. I mean, I definitely understand the tier 1 point of this too. I definitely like the discussion about it though, especially because this is a deck that we both play, so it's something that we can see two lights to.
Right.
Now, there's another deck that has two lights to it, and we've been seeing one, I feel like more than the other, but the other one's definitely been pretty prominent, and that's been Bird. And then the one that's the most common I've seen is going to be Zoo Try versus Bird Try. Bird Up is still pretty crazy in this. It still sets up absurd boards. It's still able to do quite a bit, but just being able to like do the zoo cards and just go into Zeus whenever you want, even under things like Kaiser Coliseum, it's kind of insane. So what do you think about the variants versus each other?
So I'm just going to say I think that the Zoo version is definitely better just because of the access to Zeus and how it doesn't lose to Maxi as hard as the Bird deck does. I think that the Bird deck has no counterplay to Maxi at all. That may just be me, but I feel like that deck has zero counterplay to Maxi, except like unless you draw like your actual outs. Like it has no in-engine ways to like play around Maxi.
So you would just give them a +1 and make the Xseed that like is the the OTK. You just put it in defense and pass.
Yeah, I would just make the rank one and just pass if I got Maxi. I'm pretty sure with the Bird deck.
Because like that way, like you're not dying. Like you just
You
detach
literally
one.
can't die unless they have droplets.
So I think that's probably the best way to play around it. Just you're still giving them a card, but like at the same time, like that's a pretty good counterplay. If they do have it, unfortunately, just you go summon Warbler, like you're gonna have to summon after you activate the effect. So that's really on yourself if you want to go ahead and keep playing into that Maxi. But I personally do like the Zoo variant more. I think that having things like Kaiser in the game, having things like Zeus very accessible, being able to grind with your opponent very long, just every single time that they just have an extra Zoo in hand after they like try combo is just crazy. So for me, I'd probably put the Zoo list a little higher than the Bird list, just because I think it's definitely a bit better.
I think there's a drastic difference within it, personally. Like, I feel like the Zoo version is tier 1, and I feel like the Bird version is tier 2.
I would probably put like Bird, I would say like 1.5 personally. Because like the deck itself, you still have to respect it, right? Like your opponent still has to hard draw that maxi. Like when you're doing bird combo,
there's so many hand traps though. That's the biggest thing.
That's fair. But like if you look at the bird deck right now, even in the TCG, that deck can still full combo like Oath through Nibiru. So it's still pretty wild. There are a lot of hand traps going on right now. So I'd probably still put it in 1.5 personally. I would definitely put the Zoo variant up in 1 because Zoo cards are insane, and so is Zeus. Alongside just being able to like free someone with Karis and whatnot. So we might differ by a 0.5 here on like bird. But I definitely believe that 1.5, being able to play through things like Nibiru and not really care about it and have things like Samorg Link is kind of insane.
Right. This is how I would like to rate it, right? So if I look at it, right, if I look at the bird deck, I don't think it's anywhere nearly as good as Emancipator or PK.
That's
or
fair.
Spiral as like a combo deck, right? It can play through more going second than Spiral can and Emancipator sometimes, but I don't think it ever like makes insane boards to like as insane boards to where it should be that high. Also, like in the TCG, not a lot of people main deck Nib right now. Where in Master Duel, everyone mains Nib because of Max C, and they main other hand traps as well. Where in the TCG, the Bird Up deck sees a lot of success because it's being played as like more board breaking cards, like Forbidden Droplets, Dark Rulers, and stuff, and not playing hand traps as much. Like whenever you see hand traps in a deck in this TCG, like you see like an Ash and maybe like an Imperm or a Veiler,
right?
Where in Master Duel you'll see like 12 to 15 hand traps because of Maxi.
That's fair. I could probably give you the tier 2 on this one. Definitely one thing though that I would recommend, just potentially if this was something that we revisited even like a week later and got like a little bit more time to be innovated in this kind of a format, I could see it being a little higher. But definitely the Zoo list is 110% going in 1. But like Zoo cards are broken.
Yes, I would have to agree with that.
You gotta love Zoo cards, man. Like they're just so good.
Exactly.
I was upset that Barrage was still banned amongst everything else being legal, but I was like, it's fine, I guess.
Yeah, Barrage and Rat are banned, but it really doesn't matter.
No, not at all. So for the last deck here, this is going to be one that I just feel like, to be honest, is better than the other trap deck, and that's True Draco, because they can run 6 skill drain, being 3 Erupt, 3 skill drain, and like they can just run all the other fun things and demise. So like for me, this is instantly tier 1. I think this is better than Outlook. But I want to hear what you have to say about this, because like this deck is absurd. Like it literally just does not care.
Right, I actually have to agree with you. As much as it pains me, I think that Draco's tier 1 in this format. Because I think this deck goes second a lot better than the Eldritch decks.
Oh, absolutely. It just starts popping cards. Like even Ultimatus, like if you tribute off like an APOC, like the Ultimatus can't even respond.
Like you can even play cards like Stormforth and everything. And like Diagrams at 1, yeah, but I don't think that really matters because you have like 3 Desires, you have 3 card demise, you have 3 upstart. Like, you have so much draw that it does not matter at all.
No.
It literally does not matter. You get to scope your hand every single game. And like you said, it can play literally every floodgate in the game. It can play Skill Drain. It can play Erupt. It can play Gozen Match. It can play Rivalry. It can play Tikaboo. Like, this deck is just crazy. Like, with the amount of floodgates that it can play. And the ability to go second and crack literally almost any board with this deck, because you can also play this as a going second deck and play a mono Awado.
Yeah.
And at that point, like, what does Drytron do to that?
Normal summon Awado.
Absolutely nothing against a mono. It's literally the meme again. Like, you summon a mono, you fucking activate Raigeki, and like they just lose.
That's so great. Yeah, a mono is what we call a hell of a Yu-Gi-Oh card. Definitely Draco just being up there. Like that deck just beats Zelblick all day. It's so good. Like I just remember looking at everything that was legal and just seeing how cheap Draco was too, and I was like, this is insane. Like this should not be a thing. Like Erupt is even just a rare. Skill drain is
Yeah.
like an SR. I'm like, what is going on with all this? This is crazy. And so like everything's very cheap just to like summon monsters and activate purple cards. Like it seems very good.
Right. I think like Draco has like 7 URs in the deck.
Yeah.
I think that's all it is. I think it's like I think it's like the Tikaboos, like 2 Dynamite, and there's another UR that you need to play. Oh, you need to play Demise.
Yeah, demise. It's also
So
crazy because prosperity is a super.
yeah, all the pot cards are super rares, which is insane.
Like, what are you doing, Konami? Okay. I mean, I'm down to play some Draco, I guess, online because it's just free wins. But you know, hey,
Right, Draco is just insane. Like I said before, like it doesn't matter what you play against. Like you have something for everything, right? Against the combo decks, you can summon a mono. Against control decks, your Draco engine just destroys control decks. Like
yeah,
that's not even a question. And like just the fact that this deck can go first or second makes it like so good.
yeah, I really like that a lot. This is definitely probably in half of the decks that we covered last time, but I think that these are all very important. There are a lot of very cool things to talk about here because so many people are trying to find their way in this format and this kind of like a jungle that we're going through with decks right now, right? Because there's just so many cards that like we learn every day. We're like, wow, this card's unbanned in this? Like that's crazy. Like I remember I was online yesterday and I was like, wait, Snow's unbanned? What? And I was like, whoa, like there's so many cards you can just play. It's crazy.
There is one deck though that we are missing from here that I think needs to go in a spot,
Okay.
and that is Virtual World.
Virtual World? Yeah, that was definitely missed. VFD Turbo is pretty okay, especially when you can just Chuche pop it.
Exactly. Like the only thing that beats VFD is going to be Gamma, which is another reason why I've been mentioning Gamma so much, like throughout this video, right?
Right.
Like VFD is so good still. Um, for you, where would you put the Virtual World deck?
I would put it so like with VFD, I think it's very good. And going second, they have cards like King Long that you can just activate and like actively negate something. And if they pop it, I'm pretty sure you can still use the other effect in the grave. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
To like go ahead and search. So like for me, looking at that kind of a deck and being able to still go second is pretty crazy. My only concern about that deck ever is that it has a severe ability to brick. If it goes first, though, I mean, you're not beating that deck unless you exactly open, like you said, Gamma. If it goes second, I don't know what it does to a Drytron board. I don't know what it would do to a back row deck. I would say that it would probably go in like 1.5. But that's just me because like it can play really strong going first, but going second, I just don't know what it does against some of these other decks.
Yeah, I would also have to agree that is a 1.5 deck. It's also very cheap.
Yes.
That's why I wanted to mention it. I think the deck is very cheap on Master Duel, so I think that it is definitely worth like noticing. So yeah, editor, put Virtual World right there, right beside Array, if you would.
Yeah. That'll be hopping right in there. I'm sure there's probably gonna be a deck or two here that we missed that we'll have to mention later.
Right.
There is no table 500 category now with Salad in it, so like we're probably just not gonna talk about that too much, but because it still acts as code turbo in this game, right?
Yeah,
So
it does.
I mean, nothing really changed. Salad didn't even get much back, which is kind of just funny, but um, yeah, I don't know. I think that what we covered today is pretty solid. Definitely a lot of decks to get out there and explore. If there are any decks that we did forget, definitely let me know down in the comments below. Go on Twitter as well if you have my Twitter from the description. Feel free to PM me like your deck list as well. Potentially doing like deck vaults for Master Duel here soon as well. So feel free on that one. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Uh, no, not really. I think that we should definitely maybe revisit this in about a week or two, maybe.
Yeah.
And see where everything changes, like has changed. See if like where we put things was correct, where we didn't put things was incorrect, and all of that.
Yeah, because if you look at it now objectively, like the game's still rather new. So we're just basing this off of like the first week of gameplay. And I don't feel like that's wrong because there's definitely going to be some top contenders here and there. There's going to be a lot of things kind of splashing. But it definitely would be interesting in a week or two just kind of see what really did happen with the format. Because this even happens in the TCG, right? Like if there's a regional right after a ban list and we're like, oh my god, this deck's like the best deck. Like we say like Prank Kid and Phantom Knight are going to be like the best deck with Brave. Like what happens when we go after the first regional and they both suck? Like not saying they will, but like it happens all the time where everyone's just like, this is undisputed, it's going to be the best deck, it's going to be amazing, and then like we come back 3 weeks later and we're like, wow, that deck was cool for like a week. So we'll see how it really pans out.
Yeah, exactly. Just let us know though if maybe like we did miss something or you don't agree with something.
Yeah, because there is definitely going to be certain things too where one of us may not have just seen it in the ladder enough to even be able to know or have an opinion on it. So we'll come back to this.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea for sure.
Well, Koty, thank you again for stopping by and doing another tier list with me. These are always fun, a lot of good discussion. Just kind of going back and forth on some of these decks because it's such an unexplored format and there's so many new ideas out there that is always nice to get other opinions on this.
Right. These are always fun as well. Like after like a couple of days to a week after like a new list drops or something like that, like for instance Match Roll dropping, brand new list, brand new game. Like it's always interesting to see other people's opinions and see how they perceive the format as well.
Yeah, there's honestly like some people just verse other things in the ladder, and then they get a different impression. And there's been like a couple like tournaments on this so far, but again, with the format not really being defined, we don't really have an exact meta, so it's kind of just whatever you want to play at this point.
Exactly.
Well, I hope that everyone enjoyed, and I will be catching you all in the next video. Thank you all so much.